wanted to talk a little bit about what it is that one actually needs in order to effectively weather a car. And everybody's got their own opinions on this. So, take mine for what you wish relative to what other people say. If there's one thing that you get out of this, though, it's that you do not need a massive amount of different stuff. This boxcar that we discussed in the last segment, in my view, looks pretty good. I still like running it on the layout. Any refinement would be mostly in technique and really not in what was used in order to get it to this particular stage. And everything that you see here is what I used in order to weather this car. And I would say that probably the total amount of money spent to get to this point was around $50, maybe give or take, depending. These paints back here, these are Comart acrylics. That is, I believe, a subsidiary company of Iwata, which makes airbrushes. And that's airbrush ready paint. It's got a BB in it. When you shake it up, it's nice and thin, really good pigment, high quality. And these bottles last almost forever for this type of application. For N scale, for HO, your mileage may of course vary, and for O, I don't know, get a couple. But for N scalers at least, this was more than enough. I still actually have a decent amount of these paints remaining in these bottles, and I still use them. Nowadays a lot of my stuff is Vallejo, and I swear by that. It comes in smaller bottles. And the same deal, the pigment goes a long way. It's beautiful stuff, and it's relatively inexpensive if you are buying individual bottles or even sets. But again, if you want to know the minimum, for me, this was basically the minimum. The other two were basically for the airbrush, and this is sky gray, and this is flat white, and they're used for fade coats. This is a makeup sponge and a sponge. That's literally the entire roof setup over there. And then brushes, I used maybe 4. These two are inexpensive brushes that you could probably find for a couple of bucks at a dollar store. I used them for all the dry brushing and also for applying chalks and things like that. And then the 2 fine brushes that I had used were this, and these might be in many ways the most expensive item per unit. This is a 20-aught Atlas brush. Has a nice head on the thing. I still use it. It's a little bit used up and old, so it can't use it for the same amount of detail work. But then I've also got this 10-aught Flexifile brush, and you can see that's a nice fine tip there for doing detail work, and I used that pretty much for all the graffiti or even the V that's on here. Now, the thing about living in the consumer age society is taking care of stuff. These brushes are all 8 years old or older. And every time I use them, I am careful with them. I make sure that I clean them as best as I can. I use brush soap, whatever soaps I've got around, and I make sure that they dry correctly, they don't sit in water and all this other sort of stuff. If you take good care of your brushes, then you can use them for years and years and years. For a couple of bucks in a set, these things have long paid for themselves. These brushes too. I've got a lot of other brushes now for other applications and things like that, but honestly, to get to this level of car and even to go beyond it, this is basically all you need. The last items here is I bought some chalks. Between chalks and pastels, they do have their differences. I used chalks before I went to Pan Pastels and bought their kind of weathering set. So all in all, the point here is that, again, one can watch a modeler on YouTube do all sorts of different things with all sorts of different materials, and it may seem rather overwhelming as to what to start with in order to get a decent outcome for your models. And the answer is it doesn't take very much. This is basically about it. The one item I would add, and this is where, of course, it goes above $50, but if you're doing a model railroad, or if you're doing modeling generally, then it means it probably does sit within your wheelhouse if you prioritize, and that is an airbrush. For the model that you see here, I again used a very old single action Pache airbrush. It's perfect for kind of non-precision things like just dulling down blue paint or whatever. And that thing lasted me decades. Again, I think I got it, with my allowance money, saved it up, and bought that thing when I was like 12 years old, and bought a little compressor. This is what I use now. It's an Iwata Eclipse, and this is a phenomenal dual action airbrush. I really, really enjoy this thing, and it has raised my artistry to a new level. It doesn't mean this is what you need to buy, because it's about $150. If you can't afford that, fine. There's also a lot of other options out there. But it's simply to say, one can actually do good weathering without an airbrush, and there's a lot of YouTube channels that describe that. But if you're a model railroader and you are doing modeling beyond just kind of collecting some cars, this thing pays for itself really, really quickly. I mean, I use this on everything. I use it on trees, shrubs, static grass, turf, buildings, shipping containers, models of other stuff, track work, everything. And, with that level of usage, if you keep this thing in good condition, it will last forever. This thing isn't going anywhere. It's all stainless steel, high quality parts. Like, nothing is going to fall apart here. And if it did, there's a replacement nearby. And so I'll have this thing for decades. So $150 spanning over, decades of use, I don't think is a terrible investment when you think about it. So all told, this is basically what the kit looks like, to be able to get something that looks pretty much like that. The last point I simply want to make is the other sort of rationale for keeping a kind of minimal kit like this. And, if I was going to add anything, what I did subsequently was add oil paints into the mix of media that I had. But if you keep it relatively straightforward like this, and you do a few models, you'll find that you focus on technique rather than on how many different things can I use to try to get this particular approach. For me, doing a couple dozen models using just this stuff was a great way to just learn how those paints worked, become good at using them, learn wet on wet with them, direct application, brush, airbrush, etc., so that I could focus, become really good technically at using those paints. And then, at that point, sure, add in another media. But if you go out and you buy like $1,000 worth of modeling supplies, and you come back and you set it all up and you look at it, you're going to burn out, because you're going to be completely overwhelmed as to where to start. And so I'd say start here if you're interested in weathering, and then move on. Take a variant of this based on what you like or don't like, but don't go out and buy everything. You don't need it. Start simple and work your way there. All right, have a good one.